The dining room was glowing with Christmas lights, the long oak table filled with steaming dishes, laughter, and clinking glasses. It should have been a moment of joy, the kind of night families remember for years, but for me, the air was heavy. My father, Richard, sat at the head of the table like a king on his throne, his deep voice cutting through every conversation. "Tonight is about family," he said, raising his glass. Everyone hushed, eager for his words. He had that power. Whatever he said was taken like law. My siblings sat tall, smiling, waiting for their names to be praised. I sat quietly at the far end, my plate untouched, trying not to draw attention. He started with my older brother. "Michael, you've made me proud. Expanding the business, leading deal. That's what it means to carry my name." The table erupted in applause, claps, cheers. My brother grinned, soaking in the glory. Then he turned to my sister. "Angela, your charity work, your recognition in the community, that's the heart I admire." Again, claps and cheers, as if the whole room was a choir following his lead. I lowered my eyes, already sensing what was coming. My chest tightened, and then, with a cold smile, my father's voice shifted. But as for David, the room fell silent. Even the laughter from the children stopped. Every eye turned to me, waiting. My fork froze midair. "You will not be getting any inheritance," my father said firmly, his tone sharp as a blade. "I will not waste my hard-earned fortune on someone who has achieved nothing. You've disappointed me for too long, and tonight, I want it to be clear to everyone." Gasps spread across the table. A cousin whispered something, another covered her mouth in shock. My siblings smirked behind their glasses. The humiliation burned through my chest, but I stayed still. My aunt tried to ease the tension with a forced laugh. "Richard, maybe this isn't the time." He cut her off. "No, it is the time. Let this be a lesson. Hard work brings reward. Failure brings nothing." The words echoed in the room, bouncing between the glittering decorations and the faces staring at me. I felt my throat tighten, but I swallowed it down. This wasn't the moment to fight back. I kept my head down, my hands gripping the edge of the table. The whispers grew louder, pity, gossip, judgment. My father lifted his glass again, as if nothing had happened. "To family," he said. But the word rang hollow to me. I forced a faint smile, though my heart was breaking. That night, in front of everyone, my father had erased me. And yet, deep inside, a fire began to burn. I grew up in a house where success was measured in numbers. How much money you made, how many awards you collected, how much respect people gave you when they heard your name. My father, Richard, built his wealth from scratch after moving to America. He was a proud Nigerian man, strict, ambitious, and unbending. He always reminded us that he had come here with nothing and had turned himself into someone powerful. But in his eyes, I was never the son he wanted. From childhood, I was called the soft one. My brother, Michael, was bold and sharp. He followed my father into the family business, learning about deals, profits, and risks. My sister, Angela, was the golden child, smart, social, always shining in school and later in her community work. My father admired them, bragged about them, praised them loudly in public. But when it came to me, he spoke only of disappointment. It wasn't that I didn't try. I tried harder than anyone knew. I studied late into the night, hoping to impress him. I tried small business ventures in college, selling sneakers online, reselling electronics, even a food delivery idea before those apps became big. Some worked for a little while, but eventually they all collapsed. To my father, each failure was proof that I was not cut out for greatness. He compared me constantly. "Look at Michael," he'd say. "That's how a man carries himself. Look at Angela, she makes the family proud." Then he'd glance at me, shaking his head. "And you? You waste time chasing shadows." The words stung more than I ever let him see. I carried that label, the disappointment son, everywhere I went. Relatives whispered it at family gatherings. Friends of my father would ask about Michael and Angela, but they never asked about me. I was invisible, or worse, I was the joke. There were times when I questioned myself. Maybe I wasn't meant to achieve anything. Maybe my father was right. I didn't fit his mold of success. I wasn't loud or flashy. I wasn't the type to boast about deals or show off cars. I was quieter, more patient. But in his eyes, that was weakness. At home, the favoritism was obvious. Michael got the keys to a new car when he graduated. Angela had her tuition paid in full when she chose a private university. I had to beg for help with my fees, and even then, my father made me feel like a beggar. When I asked him once why he didn't support me the same way, he said, "Why invest in a basket with holes? Everything I pour into you leaks away." I laughed on the outside when he said it, but inside I broke. Still, I refused to give up. Something inside me wouldn't let me. I worked part-time jobs, saved money in silence, and tried again and again to build something. Most nights, while my siblings went out celebrating their victories, I sat alone with my laptop, reading, planning, failing, and starting over. No one noticed, no one cared. But I kept going because I believed, no, I needed to believe, that I wasn't as useless as he made me feel. The present day wasn't much different. By the time of that Christmas dinner, my father's opinion of me had hardened like stone. To him, I was a man in his 30s with nothing to show. He looked at me as if I had wasted all the years he invested in me. He never saw the effort, only the result. And since my results weren't trophies or wealth, he dismissed me. The worst part wasn't even his words. It was the way others followed his lead. My cousins joked behind my back. Aunts gave me pitying looks. My own siblings laughed at my ideas, calling them dreams that will never wake up. It was as if everyone had agreed on one truth. David was the failure of the family. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that the very rejection that pushed me down was also building me up. Every insult became fuel. Every humiliation added fire to the quiet determination burning inside me. I didn't shout it. I didn't argue it. I just carried it with me, waiting for the day when the same people who dismissed me would have no choice but to see me. That day had not come yet. But deep down, I felt it was closer than they imagined. Do you want me to keep the rest of the script in this first-person voice from David, intimate, emotional, or should I switch to the third-person dramatic style before continuing with the next section? The dinner carried on as if nothing had happened. My father's announcement about me not getting inheritance hung in the air like smoke, but he acted as though it was just another part of his speech. He raised his glass again and smiled proudly at the table. "To my children who make me proud," he said loudly, Michael and Angela. Everyone clapped once more. My brother leaned back in his chair, grinning, enjoying every bit of attention. My sister gave a polite smile, pretending to be humble though her eyes flickered with pride. I sat there in silence, shrinking deeper into my chair, the sound of their laughter crashing against my chest like wave. Uncles leaned toward each other, whispering words they didn't bother to hide. "Poor David," one said. "He's a man, but what does he have to show?" Another chuckled. "At least the old man is honest. Why waste money on someone who can't stand on his own?" I felt the sting of their words, even though I kept my head down. The shame was heavy, pressing on me from all sides. My cousins stared with half-smiles, enjoying the drama like it was entertainment. Even the children seemed confused, looking at me the way kids look at someone they're told not to copy. My father wasn't finished. He tapped his glass again to silence the room. "I want it to be clear tonight," he said firmly. "A man who cannot build for himself cannot carry this family name. David has tried and failed too many times. I will not reward laziness or weakness. He will never be anything. He deserves nothing." The words cut deep. Each syllable was a knife. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, to scream that he was wrong. I wanted to tell him about the nights I worked, the sacrifices I made, the dreams I chased. But I couldn't. My throat locked up, and my voice betrayed me. I could only sit there, forcing myself not to let the tears show. Around me, the whispers grew louder. "Never be anything," one aunt repeated in a low voice, shaking her head. "So sad." Another muttered, "Some people are just born useless." I felt my chest ache, my hands shaking under the table. Still, I didn't move. I sat frozen, staring at my plate, my food untouched. My father lifted his glass for a final toast. "To the future, strong, successful, and worthy." Not everyone can be part of it, and that is the truth. The family clapped once more, their voices rising in celebration. But all I could hear was the pounding of my heart. I couldn't stay any longer. I pushed my chair back slowly, trying not to make a sound. Some heads turned, curious, but no one stopped me. My father didn't even glance at me. It was as if I no longer existed to him. I stood up, forcing a calm face even as my insides crumbled. I walked out of the dining room, the laughter and cheers fading behind me. Each step felt heavy, but I refused to run. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. When I reached the door, I paused for a moment. I heard them clinking glasses again, still celebrating, still pretending everything was fine. I swallowed hard and stepped into the cold night air. The wind bit against my skin, but it felt cleaner than the air inside. My eyes burned, but I kept walking down the driveway, my footsteps crunching on the gravel. I didn't look back. That night, I left quietly. My heart was broken into pieces, but somewhere in the cracks, a fire was rising. My father thought he had erased me with his words. When I left that Christmas dinner, the cold air felt like truth against my skin. I walked for hours that night, replaying every word my father had spoken. "You will never be anything. You deserve nothing." The words looped in my mind, cutting me again and again. Part of me wanted to believe him, to give in to the voice that had haunted me for years. But another part of me, the stubborn, quiet part, refused to die. I thought back to the many times I had already tried and failed. In college, I started a sneaker resale business. For a few months, it went well. I was making good money, enough to cover my expenses. But then suppliers failed me, customers complained, and I lost everything I had saved. My father laughed when he heard. Selling shoes? That's not business, that's child's play. After that, I tried an electronics venture. I imported used laptops, cleaned them up, and sold them at a profit. At first, it worked. Then I was scammed by someone I trusted, and half my stock vanished. My siblings never let me forget it. David the genius, Michael would say sarcastically, always falling for the oldest tricks. Angela would laugh along, her soft giggles sharper than any insult. I remember the long nights most of all. Nights when the whole house was asleep and I was still awake, staring at my laptop, reading articles, learning about business models, teaching myself what I didn't know. I would drink cheap coffee just to stay awake, my eyes burning as I typed and planned. I told no one, because no one cared. My father would have mocked me if he found out. My siblings would have used it as another joke at family gathering, so I carried it alone. There were moments when giving up felt easier. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, asking myself if my father was right. Maybe I wasn't made for success. Maybe I was simply chasing shadows. What kind of man tries and fails so many times? But something in me refused to stop. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was anger, maybe it was the desperate need to prove I was more than the label of failure. Each time I fell, I picked myself up quietly. I told myself, just one more try. I started working small jobs to save money. I didn't care how low they were. I worked in a warehouse, lifting boxes until my back ached. I worked at a call center, listening to angry customers shout in my ear. I even delivered food at night, riding through freezing wind just to make a few extra dollars. All of it went into my savings. My siblings laughed when they found out. Our brother the delivery boy, Michael sneered. What a legacy. But I didn't answer them. I let them laugh. Slowly, piece by piece, I started building again. I found a business idea that stirred something in me, technology solutions for small businesses. I realized that many small shops and startups struggled with online tools, payments, and digital marketing. They couldn't afford big firms, but they needed help. So I started small, offering services for almost nothing. I helped one local store create an online page. Then another hired me to manage their payments. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. At night, while others slept, I built websites, fixed systems, and studied new tools. I sent countless emails, most of which were ignored. But once in a while, someone answered. Those few answers gave me hope. I started networking with people who were also trying to climb, people who believed in growth. Slowly, my name began to spread in small circles. Still, I never told my family. They wouldn't understand. To them, nothing was real unless it was loud and shiny. They measured worth by cars, houses, and applause. I didn't have those yet. All I had was determination and a growing network. There were days when I doubted myself deeply. Some nights, I sat in front of my computer with tears in my eyes, wondering if all my effort was a waste. I thought of the whispers at family gatherings, the smirks, the way my father looked at me as if I was invisible. I wondered if proving them wrong was even possible. But then I remembered the sting of his words. You will never be anything. That sentence became fuel. Each time I heard it echo in my mind, I pushed harder. I told myself I would keep building in silence until the day came when the silence broke on its own. Months turned into years. The small projects grew into bigger ones. I learned to pitch myself better. I met mentors who guided me. I reinvested every dollar back into the business, refusing to touch it for comfort. I lived simply, wore the same clothes, ate cheap meals. Nobody saw the sacrifice, but it was there in every decision I made. My siblings continued their mockery. At gatherings, they would talk about their vacations, their new purchases, their recognition. When they turned to me, they would smirk and ask, "So, David, still chasing dreams?" I would smile faintly and say, "Yes." That was all. I didn't argue, I didn't explain. And inside me, the fire grew. Every failure had taught me something. Every rejection had sharpened me. I was no longer just chasing shadows. I was slowly, quietly building something real. What my father didn't know, what my family didn't see, was that the very pain they gave me had become my strength. The disrespect, the laughter, the rejection, it didn't destroy me. It shaped me. I told myself that one day they would see. One day, the same family that dismissed me would have to speak my name differently. And when that day came, I would not need their approval. I would already know who I was. Do you want me to keep building Section 5, the climax/twist with the Forbes reveal, right away, or should I pause here for you to review first? 1 year later, the house looked the same. The lights, the decorations, the smell of food, everything was just like the last Christmas. But I was not the same. That year of silence, of grinding, of sacrifice had changed me. My business had grown faster than I ever imagined. What started as small projects turned into contracts, partnerships, and recognition I had never expected. Still, I kept it all quiet. I never called my father to tell him, never tried to prove myself. I wanted the work to speak when the time was right. That night, Richard gathered the family again. He sat at the head of the table, proud and commanding as always. The house was filled with voices, laughter, and the clink of glasses. Everyone was already seated when I arrived. I came late, walking in with a calm confidence I had never carried before. My suit was simple but sharp, my step steady. Heads turned as I entered. Some cousins whispered, surprised at how different I looked. My father noticed too. His eyes flicked over me quickly, but he said nothing. I could sense he thought it was just another attempt to look important. I didn't mind. I quietly took my seat, greeting a few relatives with a polite nod. The dinner began. As always, my father praised Michael first. "My son," he boomed, still expanding, still conquering. "That is what leadership looks like." Applause followed. Then Angela. "My daughter, touching lives, making the Carter name shine. I am proud." More claps, more smiles. Then his eyes rested on me. A small smirk spread across his face. "And David," he said slowly, almost enjoying the pause. "Still chasing dreams, I suppose? Or have you finally learned that not everyone is made for greatness?" The table chuckled. My brother laughed openly, raising his glass. Angela tried to hide her smile behind her napkin. I didn't respond. I simply looked at my father, calm, my expression unreadable. The conversations carried on, but the tension lingered. Aunts whispered, uncles shook their heads. It was the same old story, David the failure. Only this time, something different was waiting. Halfway through the dinner, one of my younger cousins pulled out his phone. He was scrolling excitedly, showing another cousin something on the screen. "Hey," he said suddenly, loud enough for the table to hear. "Forbes just released their new 30 under 30 list." Everyone perked up. Forbes was a big deal in our family. My father loved to talk about it, though none of his children had ever been on it. My cousin began reading names aloud, laughing at the recognition of a few. Then he froze. His eyes widened. Wait, is this real?" he stammered. "What is it?" my aunt asked. He looked around the table, then back at his screen. "David Carter, Technology and Innovation Sector. He's on the list." The room went silent. Forks stopped midair. Glasses hung in frozen hands. "What did you say?" my father asked, his voice sharp. My cousin cleared his throat, reading louder this time. "David Carter, founder and CEO of a fast-growing tech solutions company, recognized for impact on small business development. Forbes 30 under 30. Gasps filled the room. Whispers erupted instantly. "David? On Forbes? Is that really him? How come nobody knew?" Michael's face twisted in shock. Angela's smile vanished completely. My uncles exchanged looks of disbelief. My aunts covered their mouths. Even the children stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. I sat still, calm, my hands folded on the table. I didn't need to say anything. The words from Forbes said everything I had been holding back for years. Richard's face was pale, his jaw tight. He tried to laugh, but it came out strained. "There must be some mistake," he said, waving a hand. "It can't be our David." But my cousin turned the phone around, showing the picture beside my name. It was me, in a suit, standing proudly for the profile Forbes had done weeks earlier. There was no mistake. The silence grew heavier. My father's smirk was gone. My siblings looked as if the ground had shifted beneath them. All those years of laughter, of mocking, of pitying me, it crumbled in a single moment. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm, steady, but filled with a weight they had never heard before. "I never needed your inheritance," I said quietly, my eyes fixed on my father. "I was building my own." The words landed like thunder. No one dared to speak after that. My father looked down at his plate, his pride shattered. My siblings couldn't meet my eyes. The same family that once laughed at me now sat in silence, the truth louder than anything I could have ever said. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the shadow in the room. I was the light they couldn't ignore. The silence after my words was heavy, like the whole room had stopped breathing. For once, nobody laughed at me, nobody whispered about me. All eyes were on my father. Richard Carter, the man who always had the final word, sat frozen at the head of the table. His hand gripped his glass, but he didn't drink. His proud shoulders slumped just slightly, as if the weight of what had been revealed pressed down on him. Finally, he cleared his throat. His voice was rough, not as firm as usual. "Well," he said, forcing a small smile, "if this is true, then I suppose you finally did something with yourself." It sounded like praise, but everyone at the table could hear the crack in his tone. It wasn't pride. It was disbelief, mixed with something he would never admit, fear. Fear of losing control. He tried again, this time louder, as if volume would help him. "Of course, I always knew you had potential, David. I only pushed you hard because I wanted the best for you. I wanted you to be strong." The words floated in the air, but they rang hollow. For years, he had torn me down, humiliated me in front of this very family. Now he wanted to twist the story, to make it sound as if his cruelty had been love. Some relatives nodded politely, but most looked at him with new eyes. They weren't fooled. They had seen the way he treated me. They remembered the words he used last year. You will never be anything. You deserve nothing. The power had shifted. It wasn't in his hands anymore. It was in mine. Michael kept staring at me, his jaw tight, as if he couldn't accept that his younger brother had surpassed him. Angela avoided my eyes completely, sipping from her glass to hide her shaken expression. The aunts and uncles who once mocked me now whispered with respect. Imagine, Forbes 30 under 30, one of them said. And we thought. He didn't finish the sentence, but I knew how it ended. They thought I was nothing. I looked around the table, letting the silence speak for me. Then I said softly, I don't blame anyone for doubting me. I gave you reasons to doubt. I failed many times. But failure isn't the end. It's where strength is born. The room was still. No one interrupted. I continued, my voice steady. Every insult, every rejection, every laugh at my expense, it hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. But that pain pushed me. It gave me fire. It made me work when no one believed in me. It made me hungry to prove that I was more than the label of disappointment. My words weren't loud, but they carried weight. Even the children sat quietly listening. I turned to my father then. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I didn't see power in them. I saw uncertainty. I saw a man who realized too late that the son he had dismissed had become something he couldn't control. I forgive you, I said simply. The words surprised even me. But I meant them. I forgive you, but I won't forget. The pain you gave me built me. It made me strong. And for that, I thank you. Richard's face tightened. Forgiveness should have been a gift, but in that moment, it felt like defeat to him. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For once, he had no reply. The rest of the table shifted. The same people who used to laugh at me now looked at me with respect, even admiration. Some smiled at me genuinely for the first time. Others nodded, as if acknowledging they had been wrong. It wasn't about revenge. I didn't feel the need to crush them or throw their words back in their faces. My dignity was enough. The truth was enough. That night, I sat at the table as a different man. Not the failure they once dismissed, but not the arrogant success they expected either. I was simply myself, a man who had fought silently, endured pain, and built something real. The shift was complete. My father no longer controlled the story. I did. The night slowly came to an end. The table was still full of food, but no one was eating anymore. The laughter that usually filled my father's house was gone. Instead, there was only silence and stolen glances. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small at that table. I didn't feel invisible. I had said my piece, and that was enough. I pushed my chair back gently and stood up. Thank you for dinner, I said, my voice calm, steady. I didn't need to say more. My cousins watched me with wide eyes. My uncles nodded slightly. My aunts avoided my gaze out of guilt. Michael and Angela kept their heads down. My father didn't move. He sat stiffly at the head of the table, staring at nothing, his face unreadable. For years, he had spoken with power and finality, but now there was no speech left in him. He was quiet, trapped in his own thoughts, maybe even in his regrets. I walked out of the dining room slowly, each step light-free. The air outside was cold again, but this time it didn't sting. It felt refreshing. I breathed deeply, looking up at the night sky. For the first time in my life, I felt free of his shadow. I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't need his inheritance, his praise, or his validation. I had built my own path, and tonight proved it. Behind me, the house was filled with silence. Ahead of me, the future stretched wide, open and mine. I walked away not with anger, but with peace. Whatever my father thought now was his burden to carry. My burden was gone. And as I stepped into the night, I knew one thing with certainty. I was no longer the disappointment son. I was simply David, and that was enough. Hey besties, thanks for watching till the end. At Christmas dinner, David's dad told him he'd get no inheritance and called him a failure in front of everyone. But 1 year later, David returned with quiet confidence, his name on Forbes 30 under 30. The whole family was left speechless. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. See you in the next one.